Hey everyone, welcome to our Deathloop Quakecon panel. I'm Anne Lewis, and I am joined today by Dinga Bakaba, all the way over from Arkane Lyon. Thanks for joining us, Dinga.
Hi everyone, it's my pleasure to be here.
If you've been following Deathloop, you've seen the story from Colt's perspective. One man trapped in a time loop with 8 people to kill in order to break it. But what you haven't seen very much of is the view from the other side. Because Deathloop not only lets you play as our protagonist, it also lets you play as our antagonist, Julianna Blake, and step into her shoes as you invade Colt's story to try to protect the time loop, keeping the island of Black Reef trapped in its never-ending cycle. Today we're going to get our first ever in-depth look at this PvP mode. Before we can really get into what it means to play as Juliana, we first need to talk about how the PvP fits into Colt's campaign.
Deathloop is an immersive, story-driven first-person shooter where you play, this assassin trapped in a time loop. The twist here being that, yes, your nemesis, your antagonist, Juliana, can be played by either the AI or another player. And I guess we're going to talk a lot more about this.
How does this mode actually work? When you decide, I'm going to play as Juliana, I want to protect the time loop, what happens when you jump into that game?
When you play as Juliana, you start by, entering some kind of hub where you can customize your character, choose which powers or which weapons to bring with you. And then you choose whether you want to invade a random player that is playing through the campaign, or one of your friends, which is, sometimes quite fun when you see that, aha, Dana is playing right now. That could be a good idea to invade her and have a little fun.
And obviously, these are going to be 2 very unique experiences playing as these 2 different characters. But what makes the experiences so different?
Colt has his own signature power that is called Reprise. And it allows him to die twice and come back, which basically you can say it's 3 lives in video games terms. And that's a big difference because Juliana has only once. If you kill Juliana, then she's back into her menu and she can invade someone else. And that's interesting because definitely Colt is able to take a bit more risk, which generally encourage Juliana players to be a bit more, careful, a bit more devious, and use things like trap, deception, misdirection, a lot of different things. But apart from that, they can both have access to the same powers, the same weapons, so you will be facing someone that is your match.
You mentioned that playing as Juliana can sometimes feel like you're a detective. So playing as Juliana really does require you to kind of have this more in-depth knowledge of Black Reef. She is the Black Reef expert, Colt is not. So she really needs to be a little bit more knowledgeable, aware of her surroundings.
Especially in the beginning, you don't know a lot about her, but it's pretty clear that she knows her Black Reef. She knows the island through and through. It's really something that rewards your knowledge of the map. Knowing that an NPC is supposed to be patrolling in this street, and they are not patrolling, so probably Colt has eliminated them. Knowing where the weapons are, where the hotspots, I would say, are. Knowing where the nice sightlines, if you're in the sniper mood. It really pays off. When you're hunting as Juliana, you're clearly hunting big game. You're hunting someone that is dangerous, that is driven, maybe they found a cool weapon and they don't want to lose it, so they will fight to the death. The ultimate test of the game is playing against someone that is as strong as you and trying to outsmart them or overpower them, depending on what your playstyle is.
Something else that you brought up earlier is the fact that Colt doesn't have to fight against Juliana. He can hide, he can extract from the map. But what is going to make Colt players want to engage with Juliana?
Playing against another player is a nice change of pace in your campaign. Intrinsically, in terms of rewards, the first thing is that if you kill Juliana, she will drop some interesting loot. She can drop a weapon, and it will always be a highest quality weapon. She can drop a power. She can drop a power upgrade, which are things that are, you have to fight hard for because powers are owned by the visionaries, the targets. She can also drop trinkets that are, basically your perks or your weapon upgrades or character upgrades. You also get a nice amount of residium, which is the resource of the game that you can harvest. It allows you to keep your weapons across the loops, so it's quite desirable to get twice the residium in a mission target. Imagine that you already lost 2 of your lives and you have only 1, and you know that Juliana invaded. Well, you have nothing to lose. If you manage to kill her, well-placed bullet or drop assassination from a roof on an unsuspecting Juliana and hop, you're back to have your 3 reprises and you can proceed with your mission.
On the flip side of that, what makes players want to play as Juliana? We've talked about how it's a very unique experience being able to play as the villain, and I think that that's something that's going to be a draw for a lot of players.
You hit the nail on the head, as you Americans say. The fact that you are able to play as the villain, as the antagonist, as the bad guy here on Black Reef is, I think, a major temptation. This is definitely something that I think feels special, especially when you're starting to see how Colt starts to act differently. They generally what we've seen is that players, like even I, start to play very differently when I know that I've been invaded by Juliana, and that's always satisfying to be kind of the mastermind. But at the same time, I have only 1 life, so I have only 1 shot, 1 chance at this. So this is quite satisfying and quite unique when playing the game. We also wanted this to be an optional mode, so we are not gaining any progression for the campaign behind playing as Juliana. It's really for the fun of it, creating cool, interesting, and memorable stories with other players, and looking cool while doing it.
In the past, we've talked about all of these Arkane water cooler moments, these things that happen in Arkane games that are just so weird, so cool, that you have to share them, talk to your friends about them. Do you think that adding PvP to an Arkane game adds to these types of moments because now you have 2 unpredictable elements?
What drove us to add that to the game was not the competitive aspect of it, really. Like that's why there's no leaderboard, there is nothing like that. It was really that. It was really the fact that it is an anecdote generator. 2 elements of chaos in a simulated world definitely create some interesting moments. Those moments of I really didn't plan for it to go that way, but that was so awesome. And you will hit record on your PS5 and save that clip and then send it to the other player in case they didn't save it, and maybe add them as a friend. It's nice to be surprised by a game. What players can add to the mix, be it something very random, very chaotic, or on the contrary, something that is like a perfectly executed plan where you will think like, oh, that other person is a mastermind. Like that's good game. GG, you deserve that one. In a more, I would say, developer-centric approach, it's an opportunity for us to just interact with the players and the community in a different way. Like the way we generally interact with them is asynchronously. Like we build the game, and then they play with the game, and then we watch on Twitch and YouTube, and this interaction doesn't really happen. But now that we get a chance to invade players or get invaded by players, we can share those moments with you all, and that's that's also exciting for us. I go by Siderath, by the way, so if you ever get invited by me, do your best.
Welcome to the panel, Bennett. I want to start off by talking about the thing that is really at the heart of Deathloop, and that is this rivalry between Colt and Juliana, their dynamic. And it is a very complicated dynamic. There's a lot of teasing and mocking and jokes, but there are also these more conflicted moments between the 2 of them. What makes their dynamic so complicated, without spoilers, of course?
Yeah, I guess it's always complicated when someone's trying to murder you. from the player's perspective, this is the first person you meet, and they're already trying to kill you. And basically, part of the initial stages of the game are finding out and exploring and discovering why she wants to do this. She has something in common with Colt. The island loops over one day, but everybody on the island seems to forget, except for her and Colt. So in some ways, they're the only people who can share an experience of what's going on the island with each other, because if they went to somebody else, they would just forget, right? Through that experience, it's basically her trying to get Colt up to her level, right? She holds all the cards, she holds all the knowledge, and so she calls you over the radio and taunts you and things like this, but it also is this sort of didactic experience where Colt is inquiring about what's going on, and she's giving him answers, but also not giving him all the answers. As the player navigates through this world, they discover things, and she can kind of fill in some of the gaps.
Juliana is still a little bit of a mystery to players, especially when you compare her to Colt and even the other visionaries. The other visionaries are very clear in their motivations. They want to be young forever, they want to party forever. We still don't really know very much about Juliana's motivations. We don't know why she wants to live forever. Can you give us any insights? Again, no spoilers.
I think if one said Juliana's goal would be immortality, I think Juliana would say that's too simple of a concept. It's beyond that. It's I think in many ways the way we've sort of crafted this character is she's most interested in Colt, like getting to her level, challenging her, which in effect is like, it's a nice narrative and sort of like some of the game elements crossover of the PvP thing, because as Dinga was saying, it's like the most dangerous game, the most interesting opponent is a human opponent, you know what I mean? And she feels like that elevates her game.
One way to look at it would be that Colt wakes up on this island. This woman is clearly the reason why everyone on the island wants to kill him. She's with him every step of the way, and she's the most interesting thing. Not only the most interesting person, she's the most interesting thing on this entire island. And it seems like the opposite is also true. So it's really interesting and never boring to see those two, those two interact.
Deathloop is really funny. I think that it's pretty fair to say that the humor is a lot more prevalent in this game than it has been in past Arkane games. Was this always the decision, or is this something that kind of evolved along the way to make Deathloop, play with it a little bit more, have that fun and bring comedy into it?
When we started adding this dimension of the Eternal Party to the world, we knew we wanted it to be fun and maybe have a little bit of humor, but definitely, the narrative team, like Bennett and Pavel, Alex, Rosa, and everyone who worked on the game definitely brought even more humor than we were expected. And we went for it.
If you just lay out the world of Deathloop on paper, you're like, yeah, this could be a pretty dystopian, dark place. There's just a lot of bad things that can go on. Like any sort of, quasi or attempt to be utopian society always has usually a very dark side to it. I think that was very clear in sort of a lot of the themes and a lot of the initial characterizations. And I think one of the things we wanted to do was really put a spin on it, and make it not just the world's super cool, but also I really genuinely enjoy being this main character and finding out what he says. When a player picks up a game, they're not worried about the stakes being against them. They're thinking about how do I win, and that's sort of what Colt acts like. He shows up and has absolutely no tools, nothing. He's literally waking up on a beach and has no idea of what's going on, and he pretty much just blazes right through it, and that's pretty much what the player would experience as well. So we really tried to make the player and Colt kind of feel like they're having a fun time together as they sort of discover what the hell is going on in this world and that stuff. So
Colt, for instance, the way he approaches it is that he's like, this this is not a great situation to be in. Like, it's a pretty shitty day that he has to over and over again. Like, everyone wants to kill him. It's cold. This is like an impossible task. Overall, the way he's dealing with it, like the one of the things that gets him through is actually this self-deprecating kind of humor. Like he's not afraid to fail at all. Like he has this kind of confidence about the jokes that he makes, the situations that he gets into, and I think it's an interesting way for players to get into that kind of mindset. As Bennett said, like enjoying the experience, enjoying the successes, enjoying the failures as well, enjoying each discovery, because he's driven, he's serious about what he's doing, but he's not taking himself too seriously. Like this is one of the ways he deals with it.
Well, we have a lot more to say about Deathloop's story. In fact, you can join us tomorrow as we sit down with the voice actors behind Colt and Juliana to talk even more about their complicated relationship and get a little bit more insight into these characters. For now, we're going to say goodbye to Dinga.
Bye-bye, au revoir, thanks for having me.
And last but certainly not least, we are joined by Dana Nightingale, our campaign designer and the architect of Deathloop's murder puzzle, which is a term that we've brought up a lot when talking about Deathloop. But Dana, please tell us, what is the murder puzzle?
The murder puzzle is the player's journey through this very strange situation they find themselves in between waking up on a beach with no idea what's going on and eventually being able to eliminate all 8 visionaries in one day and figuring out how to actually do that. So it's a process of searching for clues. It's about going to each of those visionaries' strongholds, the locations where where they're spending their eternity. They're partying or researching, or just hanging out with their friends, and infiltrating their space, learning about them, and figuring out what are the ways that I can either move them around or find out if there's any secrets to their schedule that you can exploit, so that they'll all eventually line up and you can do that perfect run. The way the player experiences this in the gameplay is every time you start a new loop, the whole island is laid out in front of you. You've got these 4 locations, and you're picking where you want to go. So it's the morning, it's a fresh day, and you're starting to craft your campaign. So you decided that you're the most interested in this particular visionary. Say it might be Igor Serling. You're really interested in what this guy is up to, so you can sneak into his camp, discover what he's up to, and hopefully find something there that will give you a clue that you need to figure out how to get him to another spot, because he's out in the middle of nowhere. It's going to be really tough to get another visionary to him, but maybe you could figure out a way to move him to a different location.
This was something that came along very early in the process, and we kind of knew that this is how we wanted to solve the murder puzzle. And so I think one of the challenges narratively was coming up with interesting characters that have these needs, wants, and desires, and then making it make sense that they would maybe go against their own self-interest or act in a non-selfish way sometimes in order to, like, quote unquote, move yourself around so the player has a chance to kill them.
A big difference between this game and the previous games that we've worked on, and to an extent Prey included, is that once the game opens up to you, you're choosing the order that you want to tackle everything. And if you're even choosing if you want to tackle anything at all, the campaign will begin with a couple of clues, and as you explore them, you'll find more clues. But in reality, you could ignore those clues and just strike it on your own. You say, actually, I want to go to this location, even though I know nothing about it. I don't think anything's there. And you don't know what you're going to discover. And even though we call them the leads, the clues that you discover to track down the solutions, even though they will have like a linear order that they can fall into, your first clue might be from the middle of that track, and you can explore in other directions from there. So what was really important to me when figuring all this out was that it was a true player-authored campaign, so that when you're talking with your friends or other fans, everyone is going to have a completely different story about how they tackled the game, who they started with, what they discovered when. You might have figured it out without the game helping you at all. Your intuition put it together, and you're able to zoom straight in on the solution.
In the long-form gameplay that we showed off in July, there were a lot of instances of Colt finding these small details that gave him either more information about his targets or information about ways to break into Alexis's mansion. So all of these little things that come together. How important are these little details that you find on the island of Black Reef to solving this puzzle?
Some of them are integral. You need this clue in order to progress to a certain location. It might be giving you a key combination to a locked door, so you really have to figure out where this piece of information is and track it down. But there's a lot more stories on Black Reef than just the story of Colt and the Visionaries and Juliana and the rivalry and the time loop even. So you may stumble across something that has something to do with a personal story from one of the other people living on the island, or something that happened before the time loop. And that could lead you to a vignette or a piece of content or a puzzle that is its own puzzle and story unto itself. So, if you've played any of our other games, you know that we love to pack our maps full of things to discover and other stories and all the little signs of life that make the world feel bigger than just your own experience. And this is no exception. In fact, I think we might have packed more into this game than any of the others.
In Deathloop, you're not really beholden to following the murder puzzle every step of the way. You can step off of the path. You can do a little bit of exploring outside of that. What is there to do outside of the murder puzzle? What are you seeing? What are you experiencing when you're not actively playing detective and trying to find that golden path?
The bizarre hijinks of the Eternalists. They get up to some pretty interesting little adventures. Now that they're in the loop, a lot of them are just left to their own devices, and they come up with all of these sometimes quite extreme ideas for how they're going to have their fun. And there's characters with schedules beyond just the Visionaries. You could learn that this particular group of people are going to be in this other map later in this other location. But something bad happens because of their idea of fun just happens to go terribly wrong and half of them die. Well, maybe you can tweak that, and then when you go to one of our other maps later in the day, now they're there. Now they're continued on their strange adventure and they're partying in a different way. But now this new location is unlocked. Practically speaking, to the player's progression, that might mean new trinkets, new weapons, but for me it means more of the story, a new location to explore, getting a better sense of what this world is about, and this is something that we just fill the game world with.
Yeah, the Eternalists like to mess around with things that go boom, so, there's all kinds of dangerous things you can get yourself involved with, so...
Speaking of dangerous things you can get yourself involved with, from either a development standpoint or a player standpoint, do you have a favorite visionary to assassinate?
From a pure player perspective, I'm very happy with what we came up with for Frank. And the reason why I feel like as a player that's the most satisfying is I think out of all of them, that's the one that you can complete just based on your own intuition. The player looking at what the game is showing them, and rather than following the clues, you can make an intuitive leap and rush to the end and solve it very quickly if you're paying attention, if you know what's going on. And I'm really happy that we were able to construct the campaign in a way that rewards that. You don't have to go through all 16 steps. You can jump straight to the end if you notice things. And I hope that when players do that, they'll feel the same satisfaction that I had when we were able to get that working.
I actually really like Frank. I think as a character, he's he was a fun character for us to write. The actor who performed him, Andrew Caldwell, was great. He's a kind of a different. I mean, like all the characters are different in their own right, but for some reason, I think Frank is he's kind of the most fun to hang out with, aside from Colt, I think. And also, I just love he's got this club basically where you can go and find him at, and it's just a fun map to play. So I really like Frank's mission.
Well, you guys will be able to experience Frank's mission and all of the other Visionaries missions when Deathloop launches on PlayStation 5 and PC on September 14th. I want to thank you all so much for joining me today. It's really been a blast.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
And we will see you later this weekend when we have that panel with our voice actors to talk about Colt and Juliana a little bit more. See you then.